This video is about replacing the Aventon Pace 350 and 500 V2 battery terminals. This may also apply to V1. Also, as a note, I'll be using terminals and connector interchangeably throughout the video. As a brief history, I purchased my Aventon Pace 350 V2 in August 2022. I used it regularly to bike to and from school. It's been nice, but I was having battery connection troubles in early 2024. I started to see some corrosion on this terminal especially, and then I later noticed it was really bad here. This was very later on, and I tried to initially fix it with just putting some solder in. It worked for a little bit, but it cropped up again, and it never became a long-term solution, and was a little bit sketchy to begin with. So I ended up contacting Aventon in April 2024. They took a look at my bike. I had apparently a 1-year warranty. I think the newer ones have a 2-year warranty. So I was out of warranty. They recommended me just getting a new battery and a new connector. And as you can see here, the battery was $500 and the connector was $40. That was a little bit out of my price range as I was in school and everything. So I ended up doing a little more research myself. I have a background in electrical engineering, so I thought I might be able to work on it myself. I ended up finding the connectors online at this website, greenbikekit.com. Their part number is PLA0239 and PLA0238, and for one side and the other. They total together are $17, so that was much more in my budget, and I was hoping I could buy them and fix it up myself. Here are some of the supplies. Obviously you need those connection terminals, the 0238 and the 0239. Depending on how your terminals are looking now, you may only need one or the other. Definitely my battery one was a lot worse, but the bike side was also kind of bad, so I figured I might as well knock them both out. You'll definitely want a soldering iron and some solder. You'll want some kind of way to splice these wires together. I ended up buying these 16 to 14 gauge butt splices from Ace Hardware, I think. They ended up working really well. You could probably use some wire nuts or something. I'll show later, of course. I tried to solder directly to the connector within the battery, and that it just didn't work out very well. So I ended up needing these. You'll want some wire strippers, of course, too. Phillips screwdriver and adjustable wrench to take apart each of the things and put them back together. Electric tape you'll definitely want. A heat gun and 1/4-inch heat shrink tubing are optional. You can kind of use electric tape in lieu of those, but heat shrink's a little bit nicer, gives a little better finish. Alright, so next up, you'll want to get to your battery. Is the way I did it first, at least. It's a little more complicated. If you can do this one, you can definitely do the bike. To start this, you'll want to open up this front part of the battery. There's these 4 screws on the outside. You'll just unscrew them. They take a little while, but eventually you'll get it. One thing not shown in this picture is a warranty void if broken sticker that goes between this and the main part of this battery here, this chemical part, and then the electrical part here. It's already gone. It was about halfway through doing this that I decided I could take some pictures to make a video. Anyways, just a reminder, if you think you might have a warranty, it's worth contacting Aventon and see if they do. If not, then it doesn't matter at this point, so you can just take it apart. This thing, once you unscrew it, it doesn't come apart super easy. There's some adhesive between here and the padding on this side. It takes a little bit, you just have to keep wiggling it. Eventually it comes apart, and then there's only these wires connecting the two parts together. Another thing to note when doing this, when using this battery, you set it in the bike, and there's a button and a light on the top here. In order to turn the bike on, you have to push the button and the light will turn on, and then you can turn the bike on. What it seems is that there's a circuit in here that when the light's off, it actually cuts power between this main chemical part of the battery and the terminal over here. So there's no voltage on these lines. But when the light is on, it of course is supplying voltage to this terminal. So generally it's a good idea to keep the light off during your repairs. You can turn it on to do some voltage checks and things like that, but you can definitely keep it off. I found you can hold that button and it'll turn the light off. Otherwise it normally just times out after a long time. So good thing to keep in mind. Moving along, the next step is to just remove that connector terminal out of this housing here. Again, I don't have a picture of it before, but here it is when it's gone. One of the things that I was surprised by when I first opened it up is that there's a lot of this rubbery insulation, a lot of stuff going on over here. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to get it out, but you can, is what I found, and it just takes a lot of work with either a razor blade, some kind of knife. You just got to kind of cut up this insulation. It's nicer if you're able to cut the wires beforehand that are here. There's the power lines that you can see here, the red and the black. And there's also a yellow and an orange small wires. We'll talk about those later too, but just go ahead and cut those. Those end up don't being anything, so no need to worry about those. Another thing to note is before going forward with that, you might as well go on the outside and remove that nut that's holding that connector in. That way, once you start removing this rubbery stuff and start to free up the connector, you can start to wiggle it out and up. And as it frees up, you'll be able to eventually pull it out of there. Oh, and one thing to note too, these two power wires here, this red and black, these go to the charging port and from the charging port to the battery. So we want to just keep those, don't cut those, don't worry about removing those. Okay. This is just a closer look at that housing too after you remove the connector terminal. You can see that insulation a little bit better and all that's going on there. Again, the wires you don't want to cut, just leave those. And you can see these blurry wires that I have cut. So here we have the battery terminal that I've removed. This is the original one that came with it. And here's that nut that's on that one side. You saw that in the very first picture, but yeah, just remove that before you start trying to take this out. Here's all that stuff that I was talking about. There's more along the sides and things, but I just left all that on the top because it just holds the wires in place. It doesn't hold it down or anything like that. This is the red power wire, the positive. Here's the black power wire, the negative. And here's the orange and yellow wires I was mentioning before. Those don't seem to have any significance. I tried using my multimeter to see where they're connected. It wasn't anywhere. And spoiler, on the bike side, there's no orange or yellow wire or any other wires besides the power wires there. So these, and it's kind of a mystery. Maybe my memory's bad too, but those don't seem to serve any purpose, and you'll see them cut on the next slide as well. Let's go to that. Here you can see the cut wires. You can kind of see the ones before, but here's the red power wire, the positive side, black power wire, negative side. I have it taped off here. Just be careful, just be safe. Here's the yellow and orange wires that I was talking about before, and they have some kind of connection here. Again, I don't know what it is, and they don't seem to serve any purpose. I ended up just taping them off just to have them out of the way and just leaving them in there. There's this padding here. This is where some of that adhesive was, and it presses right up against here. So just one thing to note when you're finishing up and closing this battery together, you want to leave stuff out of this way. This area is kind of gets compressed, but there's space all around there and all around here. All right, on to inserting the new battery terminal in there and what that process looks like. So this process does require a little more wire to solder directly to the terminal that we're going to set in. It's 16 gauge wire on the inside, so I'd go at least that. You can go bigger, that wouldn't hurt. But if you don't have any 16 gauge wire lying around, you can actually get some from inside the bike on the other side of that terminal. If you're going to be replacing that one too, you might jump to that and do that. You can get, there's just some excess wire in there you can pull out if you don't want to go by 100 feet of it or whatever. But if you have some, go ahead and just use that. You'll want 2 to 4 inches of this or so. It's not electrically important, it's just mechanically important to be able to connect to the wire that's already inside the battery. As a general idea, if you've done electronics before, you'll kind of know what's going on here, but you're just going to strip off maybe a 1/4 inch of the insulation on each side, maybe a little more, and you'll want to solder these wires into these little terminals here. And then you'll have some heat shrink that you can put on over it. Once you solder those down, first, slip the heat shrink over, and then you can heat the heat shrink with the heat gun. Possibly a hairdryer could work too, I'm not sure, but you should have that shrink, and you can get it over the whole entire terminal. Let me go back. This terminal is much bigger than the wire, this circle here. You can get it over that whole thing and just get a nice seal. If you don't have heat shrink or don't want to use it, I would just recommend using electrical tape so you can get good insulation between these two, just in case any wires come loose or anything, any little strands. The last thing to mention here, I have it shown with these red and black wires, but just be very careful with which wire you're connecting to. This negative side is marked here, and the positive side is marked here. Whichever one you do connect, if you get the right colors, that makes it easier, but if you use different colors, just make sure you're conscious of that while you're soldering them to, or splicing them to the wires within the battery so that you don't get them mixed up. Before going any further, I do want to mention, if you're not familiar with soldering or heat shrink tubing, it's worth looking up some videos on it on YouTube or wherever. There's hundreds of them. They can give you at least a basic idea of how to do that to make sure you get a good, nice solder, because if it's not good, it could either come undone or it just won't be steady. So now that you're at this point, you have the connector with the wires on it. We'll want to put that connector into the housing here, and to do that, you'll just want to set it in there. It has a specific orientation you'll need to put it in. If I remember right, there's some kind of keying, there's some kind of notch in the housing that lines up with the connector, so it should fit in really nicely. And you can double check against one of the first slides in this video. It will have the correct orientation there. Just make sure it lines up with that, otherwise you'll just have to undo it and reorient it. But once you have that, you'll want to put the nut on the other side to keep that terminal in place. If you haven't at this point, you'll want to strip insulation off the battery side wires, this red and black wire, and that way you can splice these wires to the wires we've connected to the battery terminal. To do that here, I've used these butt splices. At this point, you might be expecting a joke about butt splices, and as I try to think of one, I just remembered when my parents left me at a rest stop in California. So you'll just want to put the wires into these butt splices and crimp them. There's also videos on crimping too, but basically there's a metal cylinder into these, and you're just compressing those with wire strippers. Usually have crimps on them. You can also probably just use pliers, something like that. You're just clamping down those so they have a grip force on the wire and also provide an electrical connection. And of course, you want negative to negative, black to black, and red to red, positive to positive. Here I just got a little bit closer look at the connection with the splices on the inside. Just as I was closing it up, you can kind of get a final look. Here you can really see the red to red. You can see this black wire. It's hard to see this black wire. It's definitely there. Also, it's worth with these splices. I've had troubles with them in the past, but just make sure, do a little tug test, gently tug on it. If it feels loose, I would just crimp harder to make sure that that splice is really gripping it and it won't wiggle out over time or anything like that. So just so it stays connected in there. As you close this and put it back together, just be careful with all the wiring in there, especially the splices, but anything else. Just try to move it and make space for it so that it can sit nicely in there. And you pretty much, once you put it back together, make sure it sits nicely, and then just put the screws back in. And at that point, you should be done with the battery side. Should be good to go. When it comes to the bike side, it's definitely much easier. If you can do the battery side, you can definitely do this bike side. The connector is a little bit different, but it has the same nut. And basically, to get to this one, you'll see the screws around here. Some of them are kind of long. Just unscrew each of them. Eventually, this black panel will kind of pop out. I also had a little bit with the lock over here. It seemed to be connected. This part here, this metal that's jutting out, is attached to the lock, and so I kind of had to. It kind of came in to the bike, and it kind of pulled out with this whole assembly. Maybe there's a better way to do that, but that's how I ended up kind of doing it. And then the other side of this connector is a lot nicer than the battery. I don't remember any kind of insulation or anything like that. So it should just, as long as you get this nut off, it should just slide out the backside. And then again, there's a lot of extra wire on the bike side, which is nice. If you need some, you can take some for the battery side, but also it gives you a lot of room to work with. You can, if you have a small table to set it next to, you can easily kind of just set it there and work on it there. With this one, you don't need any kind of splices or anything like that because you're not working in a constrained area and with all those other wires. Basically, I ended up just soldering the wires that are in there. Of course, you remove this old connector and you just cut it out. You strip some of the wires that are in there, and then you bring in the new connector, and you'll just solder those wires directly onto this new connector. And then again, it's just the reverse of what you did. As you're reinstalling this connector, again, same as the battery, it should have some kind of keying, some kind of notch that it'll set into nicely, and it should have this orientation exactly with this keying right here. This makes sure that it's not put in the wrong orientation, that it's not flipped 180 degrees, for example. But yeah, it should have a keying within the assembly itself, so that it sits nicely like this. And then again, just put the lock back into place. You'll push this black paneling back into place, and then just screw it back in. And at that point, you should be good to go. This you'll have the new connector here, should be soldered in, and if you fix your battery side, that should be good too. So you should be all set. I hope this video was helpful. Please leave comments. Anything that my video channel I have doesn't really have any particular topic. This is just something I thought might be helpful. So let me know any questions. There could be something that I forgot. I did this repair about a year ago, and I meant to make a video, and it just took me a year. But hopefully that helps, and yeah, have a good day.